What Robert Eggers, the director of the Northman film that came out earlier this year, has to say in this brutal interview about Hollywood is absolutely epic, and I think you guys are going to appreciate and really relate to what he has to say here. I know that I do, and I know that a lot of you that are watching this video do as well. We all are sick and tired of a lot of the nonsense coming out of Hollywood right now, and we're going to be getting right into this and seeing what he has to say in this epic interview, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. The Northman director Robert Eggers is sick of cinema's modern, tiresome, lame, and commercial culture. Robert Eggers certainly isn't the most mainstream-minded filmmaker of filmmakers, making his mark as he did with Thrillers, The Witch, and The Lighthouse, experimental, and the darlings of critics. So, if you guys haven't seen any of Robert Eggers' films, I highly recommend them because they are not like anything that you really get from Hollywood these days. The Northman, this film right here, is absolutely fantastic. It is my favorite movie of the year, and I highly doubt that this film is going to be beat by any movie coming out this year. This movie is just so awesome. And besides that, he did like The Lighthouse, which was a very interesting, unique film that you just don't see coming from Hollywood these days. And all of his films are just really unique and very well done, very story driven, and that is something that I appreciate. They don't, they're not worried about the woke nonsense. They're not worried about pushing neo-Marxist agendas or anything like that. All Robert Eggers is focused on is telling good stories, and that is what we need at the end of the day more than anything else. Going all out in 2022, Eggers went for broke with The Northman, a high-octane actioneer historical piece which unfortunately failed to light up its target audience, which is a shame. I mean, that is something that I just find very sad, is that there are a lot of films that do come out in theaters that just don't get the support that they should, because unfortunately a lot of people are way too busy going to support, all of the woke Marvel films that are coming from the MCU and the next Star Wars film, which is a disaster pretty much every time. And so people would rather go see those types of movies instead of going to support movies that actually deserve support and should get support, like The Northman. Anyway, so let's get into some of the stuff that he has to say here. I'm very grateful that most people who have been writing about this movie understand my intentions, which is great. Every once in a while, when people are saying it's glorifying violence and masculinity and this kind of thing, it confuses me. But I think that when you try to impose contemporary morals on the past when you're telling a story, you just lose you lose it. And he is completely correct about this, and this is actually a very strong common sense type of mentality that he has right here, because there are a lot of stories that people tell that are historical pieces, and then the wokesters get super mad at these different filmmakers and writers that are telling these stories because they aren't translating the historical stories in a modern contemporary woke context, and so they lose their minds, which is exactly what the wokesters did at The Northman as well. They said this movie had way too much toxic masculinity in it and all of these ridiculous things. And, I appreciate the different aspects of this film because Robert Eggers, the filmmaker, isn't trying to pander to woke, ridiculous leftist audiences. And so he continued, and one of the things that I thought he said here that was absolutely fantastic, and we'll close out with what he says right here. This sounds super uber precious, but I think it's hard to do this kind of creative work in a modern secular society because it becomes all about your ego and yourself. And then he says this: as a filmmaker working for a studio, Eggers observed, you're censoring yourself because it's not about like me. So you say, oh, I got to rein that back because that's not what this altarpiece needs to be. Any worldview where everything around them is full of meaning is exciting to me because we live in such a tiresome, lame, commercial culture now. And we see that everywhere, right? Like, we're right in the middle of Pride Month right now, Pride Month, and this is the month where all these different corporations and companies and everything else try to do everything they can to pander to the alphabet community to try to scrape more money out of them. That is all that it's about at the end of the day. They don't actually care about the alphabet community or anything like that. It is all about commercializing all of these different little communities and groups and everything else, and that is what it's all about. And I totally agree. The woke culture is tiresome and lame, and the whole commercialized culture coming out of Hollywood these days is just so ridiculous, and I'm just so sick and tired of it, which is why I would rather go support movies that are coming from directors like Robert Eggers and like The Northman. So with all of that being said, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Leave a like, subscribe, I'd appreciate that a lot, and I'll talk to you all in another video very soon.